Phenotypic ratio is 100% black. Genotypic ratio is also 100% heterozygous dominant, big B, small b. Now the rules of probability. For the Mendelian genetic that we studied so far, they all uses the probability. If you have learned about statistics and learned about probability, you know this is a very simple example of probability. Mendel, he knows his math really well. He knows the statistics really well. That help him to understand genetics or the pattern of inheritance. It is the same as when we are tossing coins. Basically, in Valley College, the same Bio 3 class, they do the tossing coin experiment. So for students to study the genetic, the rule of multiplication. So what does it mean? The probability of an event is the product of the separate probability of the independent event. So basically, after we cross it, after we multiply, the probability will become smaller. So basically, that's the rule of multiplication. Let's take a look at the real an example in the next slide. So remember, you have let's say F1 generation. You have a big B, small b, heterozygous dominant female, and a heterozygous dominant male. So again, the sperm on top, the eggs on the side. So the sperm, okay, you can have 50% of the chance to get the. You have 50% of the chance to get the big B sperm. Remember, you have 50% of the chance to get the small b sperm. And similarly, for female, you have 50% of the chance to get the big B egg, and 50% of the chance to get the small b eggs. And then we fill out the Punnett square. We again, okay, you see that one half multiplied by 1/2, you become 1/4. This is the rule of multiplication that we talked about in the previous slide. So you got the one big B and the big B here. So the filling out of the Punnett square, basically you already did the law of multiplication. You already did the statistics when you fill out the Punnett square. So in each case, you have 25% of the chance in each square. But as we know that here, this heterozygous dominant is the same as this heterozygous dominant. And we also know that these three cases, they are the dominant trait. That's all you got, 3-to-1 ratio in the phenotype. And the genotypic ratio is also 1-to-1. So when we do the coin tossing experiment, you should also get 1-to-1 genotypic ratio and 3-to-1 phenotypic ratio. So Mendelian genetics, or the Mendel's principle, can apply to many human phenotypes. Let's take a guess which phenotype is dominant, which one is recessive. So freckle. Having freckle and having no freckle, which one is dominant, which one is recessive? I want you to take a vote. Freckle or no freckle? I'll give you the answer at the end. Widow's peak and straight hairline, which one is dominant, which one is recessive? I also want you to take a guess. You don't need to tell me. I don't know your answer. Last one, free earlobe or attached earlobe. So which one is dominant? Which one is recessive? Let me give you the answer in the next slide. So it turns out that having freckle is actually a dominant trait. Having widow's peak is also dominant trait. Having free earlobe is also dominant trait. For freckle, I do know a hypothesis. I do know a possible explanation for that. People said that, okay, if you, as we know, the fair-skinned people, when they are exposed to sunlight, then freckle will develop. And then scientists propose that, freckle is a dominant trait because when fair-skinned people are exposed to sunlight, freckle develop instead of, guess what, skin cancer. So in other words, developing freckle protect the person from developing skin cancer. So that's why scientists propose that, that's why developing freckle is a dominant trait. It helps to protect protect people from developing cancer. And people who do not develop freckle, they have a higher incidence for developing skin cancer. So that's why no freckle is a recessive trait. So we can study the trait also by the family pedigree. So I like this one here. It says that dominant trait does not imply that it is normal or more common than recessive phenotype. And the wild type trait does not necessarily mean it is by dominant allele. So yes, we will look at detailed example what it means, because some of the dominant trait, they are actually disease. Yes, some dominant trait, they are disease. It does not imply, but I can tell you that most of the time, I would say most of the time, yes, dominant trait, they are normal and they are common. They are more common. They are many of the dominant trait, they are wild type trait. They are the common. They are normal. We have several dominant trait that are disease carrying and they are not wild type. Yeah. Because they are disease carrying, those gene, most of people we carry recessive allele. We carry the homozygous recessive allele. As a matter of fact, those homozygous recessive allele, they are healthy, normal one. The dominant one, they're actually disease. So let's take a look. Single gene disorder. Single gene disorder. So now we go to the term autosomes and sex chromosome. What is autosome? Autosome meaning that it is the chromosome. I hope you remember that we have 23 pair of chromosome. And we have 46 chromosomes. The 23 pair, they are the homologous chromosome, okay? For the 23 pair, 22 pair, we call that autosome. Autosome, meaning that they determine our body trait, the trait of our body. And then one pair. One pair, they are the sex chromosomes. This one pair of sex chromosomes determine our gender. If it is X and Y, they are male. If it is X and X, then that person will be female. Oops. So yeah, that's what we meant. Autosome. Autosome meaning that it is the body trait. Okay. Okay, as you can see from the slides, no need to memorize this table. You don't need to memorize this table, but we will go through some of the disorder. As you can see that some of the disorder is recessive. And some of them, they are dominant. Yes, dominant disorder. That means some of the dominant allele will give you the disease. So we'll go through some of them. Those you need to know. Okay, let's take a look at some example of recessive disorder. We'll look at cystic fibrosis first. It is the most common lethal genetic disease. Okay, I need to add something here. Among Caucasian. In the United States. And yes, this cystic fibrosis is caused by recessive allele. About 1 in 31 American. The cause, because the chloride ion cannot go through cell membrane. What's the result? The result is one of the major symptoms is the accumulation of mucus. In lung, and a blockade in the pancreatic duct. So and then we'll look at another disorder called achondroplasia. Achondroplasia, it is a dominant disorder. It's a dominant disorder, meaning that it is a dominant allele that causes this disorder. So it's a form of dwarfism. So if a person has homozygous dominant genotype, like big A, it will cause the death of the embryo in utero. In utero meaning that during pregnancy in the uterus, in utero. So if the person has a heterozygous dominant, that means one dominant allele, one recessive allele, big A, small a, then that person will have achondroplasia. That means achondroplasia, patient with achondroplasia, they have 50% of the chance to pass this condition to any children. In other words, most of us with a normal normal body height, we are homozygous recessive. We have two recessive allele. That means small a, small a. So this is the example of the Punnett square for achondroplasia.